Hello and welcome to Village Catholic Conversation. My name is John Kinubi, the host, joined by my dear friend, Art Bima Jr.
Morning, John.
Host. Hey, how you doing?
Great.
Yeah, and our dear friend, Tom Fado. And this is a great day. You know, how wonderful is it?
It is a great day, beautiful day.
Yeah, beautiful day. And when I was driving here, I passed through Lancaster, and it's just given me a homely feeling. Like I would just, my mind just went home. I kind of slowed down, and I was stopping the traffic because it was just like beautiful areas.
So you're saying Lancaster is like Kent?
Yeah. Like called
Farmland.
Farmland, yeah,
Right.
farmland.
Cool.
I for those who don't know, I grew up in Kenya, and we did a lot of farming, and just made me feel like, oh my gosh, this is where I need to be.
That's great.
So
yeah.
if you were in the area today and you had a traffic jam, it's because John was slowing down.
Oh yeah.
He's like, wait a minute, where's the gazelle?
Where's the gazelle? No, I was looking at where the gazelles now. But it was good. I saw cows and goats and horses,
Amish guys in their
Amish
carts.
guys,
Yeah,
and
Country,
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
it's a beautiful country, and I just thought, bring my family over sometime to enjoy that, and maybe I'll live there someday, and that way we're not too.
Get
far
out of Philadelphia. You need to come to God's country here.
God's
I know.
country.
Offense to our Philadelphia brothers and
Right,
sisters.
right,
of
exactly.
course.
No. Philadelphia's wonderful.
Oh yeah, you better say that. Yeah, it's also good when you're out there. It can be the village Catholic conversation, village.
Right.
Well, I'm not sure whether you call them village, but yeah, it's good. So, yeah, thank you guys for joining us, and we also welcome our listeners to pull their chairs to join us on this conversation. And today, really, we want to have a very interesting conversation, and this is something that has been ongoing for a period of time. And our conversation today is based on raising and bringing up your kids or Catholic kids in a family setting. There was one article I saw a while ago, and I think I shared with you, about this woman who wrote an article on Legatus about sending kids into public school versus Catholic schools. And then it had a lot of both aggressive, agreeable comments from different audiences. So I thought this would be an interesting conversation because it's where we are. Kids, how do we raise kids Catholic? And I'm blessed that both of you have gone through this and and I want to understand, why, how come, all those questions that are going in my mind. Again, this is Village Catholic Conversation. So, Tom, tell us, not Tom. I almost called you Tom.
It's happened before.
Forgive me here.
It's happened
Forgive me
before.
here.
I can tell you stories. So it is a real struggle, and both of us, Tom and I, who worked in Catholic education for a long time, can tell you how many parents, Tom, who have high school kids who are just distraught that their kids aren't practicing their faith. And not that it's hopeless, but boy, it's way easier when you start when your kids are little. Preschool little kids. So my first thing would be to tell people, if you have younger children, don't wait till they're in middle school and high school to start living your faith authentically, because it's much harder to not impossible, but it's harder to kind of put things back together than when you start from a young age.
Are you saying that if from a young age, as a parent, you live your faith?
I would say
I guess that's from there.
From
right?
my standpoint, we weren't necessarily walking around the house praying the rosary every 5 seconds, kind of a thing. But prayer and Catholic identity, if you walk into my house, it's like a little shrine. I mean, there's images of Catholic images and crucifixes in every room. Everything begins with prayer. Church was never an option. We didn't speak about church as something that, you got to do. We're excited to go to Mass. It's a privilege to go to Mass. We're free in this country. We can go without any hindrance. So a lot of it is just basic language and talking about the faith is not if it's an extra thing, but it's woven into our daily lives. And I think, Tom, you would probably affirm that.
Well, yeah, let's start with a couple things. I think the first thing is, obviously we've got people out there that various degrees of having children, younger children, older children, maybe some children who have drifted away.
Yeah.
First thing is there's no guilt here. Okay.
No.
So if you're in that category, we have some children who have drifted. This is not about you failed, you did wrong.
No,
So just
absolutely not.
clear about that. And of course, as you said, there's children can always come back. There's seeds that are planted.
Yes.
So we keep praying. So that's the first thing, is to not. It's not about assigning guilt or oh I missed my chance, etc. I think the second thing I always look at is let's people today talk about culture, and our culture is challenging.
Yeah.
Many times people say, oh, the kids today, they're worse than our generation. They're more of this, they're more of that, they're less respectful. And I always say, and I've talked to literally thousands of parents, the children are not any different than we were. Same hopes, same dreams, same fears, same aspirations. But I will say, that's a very important point, that the culture today is far worse than anything that other generations experienced. Not that times are more difficult. I mean, economically, things are better than ever in many ways, etc. We're not the Great Depression or the World War II generation. So life in general is not more difficult now, but the culture. In other words, how does TV, radio, movies, what's out there support or hinder faith? It's worse now than ever. And that's an important premise as you go into the conversation. How do I keep my children grounded in their faith? So that's very important. Some first comments. When I would do a parent talk, I start with putting a question up, and I put up on the board, I want my child to blank, and I would say, now answer that, and turn to people to your left and right, and how would you answer that question? I want my child to. And this is groups of anywhere from 20 to sometimes 500 parents, right? How do you answer it? And of course, and I take feedback from the people, and you'll hear answers. I want my child to be healthy, happy, successful, holy, right? And inevitably, someone says, I want them to go to heaven. I want them to to return to their Father. Yeah. And of course, and I start by saying that is the answer. And in fact, if you can only answer it one way, which is the whole point of the exercise, isn't that the only answer? Yeah. Isn't that the first answer? But, and it seems simple because we're going, well, of course, but that's not always what people think of. I submit to you that is the only answer. And when I say that, there are people that are shaking their head, absolutely, that's the only answer. Yeah. And then you have the buts. But, which reminds me of one of the gospel readings coming up is Jesus saying, hey, follow me. And someone says, well, I will, but I got to go do this. And I say, wait a minute, there are no buts. So there's the next important point. When it comes to trying to raise our children, right, our job is to do all that we can to keep them on the path back to their Father. There is no but. Do you want your children to be happy?
Sure, absolutely.
You want children to be healthy, successful, right? We've got college grad. We want them to pay the bills, their own bills. I mean, we want all those things, but none of them take place in front of my role as the steward of my children is to do all that I can to guide them back to the Father. And that's the very first important premise. So then after that, now we can talk about the practical ways. But it begins with a mindset that first and foremost, the choices that I'm going to make, how I'm going to parent, how I'm going to live, starts with my job is to help you on that path back to the Father. Everything else, not that it's not important, everything else is secondary.
That's a very deep way of starting off this conversation. And before we say anything else, we're going to take a quick break here. And once we get back, we'll continue to build on what Art and Tom said about raising and keeping our kids Catholic. This is John Kinuvia hosting Village Catholic Conversation. And my friend here, Art Bima Jr. Welcome back. And thank you for joining us. And pull up your chair again and listen to the Village Catholic Conversation. Now, where we left off, my friends, you talked about language. And I think that's a very important piece in bringing up our children, because I think language kind of forms everything in what we're doing. Why is that? And
well, let me harken back to a previous episode when we were talking about trust. And our stories and our witness of our lives is even more critical in a family setting. So I need to be modeling my Catholic faith before my children. I can't. It is not do as I say, not as I do. So once again, I come back to language and attitude and approach to situations. If I as a father am just spewing vulgarity at every drop of the hat, I can't be shocked when my kid picks up on that.
Yeah.
When I'm complaining about other people and gossiping and speaking ill of other folks, and at the drop of a hat I'm angry with their mother about something, or she's doing that, I'm not modeling the behavior. So there is the speaking the truth of the faith, and there is the prayer, but all of that is undermined if I'm not living authentically as a person of prayer and faith in my words and in my actions. And as a father in particular, we're 3 dads. We have no mom representation here today. But as a father, you and I know, and it says so in Scripture, in that very awkward, Corinthians, Colossians, I can't remember where, the point that priests don't like to preach on. Women be submissive.
Oh, yeah.
Wives be submissive to your husbands.
Yes.
Which everybody makes a big deal of, wives be submissive to your husbands. Okay? But the next part is, husband, love your wives as Christ loved the church. He laid his life down. So, as a father, my number one role in raising my Catholic children is to lay down my life for my family, first and foremost. So, my job is to not respond to all of my personal needs, but my needs of my wife first and my children after that. That's the model that leads to Catholic children, because they're looking at the father and the mother as an example of how to live. And it doesn't matter so much what you say sometimes, it's how you act and behave.
Yeah, wow. That's fascinating, because I want to tie out to what you were saying as your role when you identify, you're the father, you're the mother, and you want to make sure that you raise your kids Catholic. So, and there's this thing you just mentioned here, there's no but. You want to take them to heaven, there's no but. So the reason why I was bringing the language and the action that we do is to help our listeners to see how those two tie in. The language you use when you're taking people somewhere, in this case, taking them to heaven, without putting that word but.
Right.
Yeah.
A couple years back, there was the largest study done of young people in faith, and people can look it up online, the National Study of Youth and Religion, and it's just a treasure trove of data that those of us in ministry always said, we believe that children who go to Mass every Sunday tend to do better than those who don't, and and people who practice faith at home are more apt to have children who practice faith than those who don't. We always believed that and taught that, but this study came out, and it shows the data. It shows that that's true. It shows that as much as we think that friends are influential in our children's lives, they are, the statistics show that the children will still be most influenced in their faith by the parents, and will adopt the faith practices of the parents. And then it goes further in breaking those things down. It shows that so many young people today, especially Catholic children, they don't have, and I'm glad you mentioned it right away, Art, even before we got this far down into this conversation, the language of the faith. That our children, many children are not articulate in the faith. They go to Sunday school, and God bless the educators who teach Sunday school, or even go to Catholic school, and God bless the teachers at Catholic school. I believe in Catholic education. But if it's not reinforced at home, if it's not spoken at home, if it's only once a week at Sunday school or a couple hours a day in Catholic school, and they don't have those conversations at home about sacraments, about Scripture, it doesn't work, or it's less likely that young person is going to adopt and own their own faith, right? It's one thing to say at a Catholic school, hey, we have confession available. And again, statistics show kids in Catholic school, guess what? Go to confession more than students who don't go to Catholic school, because it's there, right? But to the parents, don't say to your child, did you go to confession? When's the last time you went to confession and took your child? Because that alone will influence your child far more than what the Sunday school teacher says, or what's said in the Catholic school. That's how we model our faith. Do we take them to confession? Do we make an excuse for not going to Mass? If we do, we cannot be surprised later on when they drift from faith. Our witness, our example, our willingness to not put any buts in front of it is the number one thing that's going to influence our children.
So the onus here to keep our kids Catholic, or here more, all of us agreeing, is on parents. And sometimes I say, when I'm teaching leadership, I say leadership is visual. People do what people see. So even in my house, what my son is seeing me do is what he does. And sometimes I get fascinated because, let's say I'm practicing for an event or for a talk I'm going to give, and I'm on a microphone or in my room with my phone, and I'm saying, hey, my name is John Kinuvia, and I'm here to talk about 1, 2, 3. Sometimes when I'm not saying him, he'll come in and he will just put on my tie, and he will start saying, hey, my name is John Kinuvia. He'll start doing the same thing I'm doing. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, wow.
Absolutely.
This is what they see. Right. And this is what they want to do.
Correct.
So, and again, if I'm doing the other things, then it means that it's easier for them to model that. So I think the language we use, who we are, really determines at a higher degree if our kids will stay Catholic all the way. Sure enough, the research also is showing that 70% of the prep parents, for example, don't practice their faith. Sure, it's an understanding that they are taking their kids to the prep so that the kids can get the faith, can get the language of the faith. How can we help these parents?
Yeah, that's tough. It is tough. Unfortunately, there's so many more resources available now. Can we just step back 1 second
Yes, sure.
before we go there? Because I'm sitting there thinking, when listening to you and listening to you talk, and what comes to mind is the idea of the family, which is completely under attack right now.
Yeah,
the family.
yeah.
And there's a reason for that, because Satan knows that is the key. That is the key to all of our Catholic and Christian worldview is the family, and family is no accident.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful section in the Catechism of the Catholic Church that talks about the value of the family and the role of the parents. And I think it's 2121. I had to give a talk, and I remember 2121, where it talks about the duty of the parents is so primordial, so important in educating your children, and it's first that you can't give it away. Like you can't even delegate that. You can get help from a Catholic school or the families, and it talks about the family being the little church. And I think some of the recent popes have talked about the family as a little church. So your home, John, with your 3 little ones now, that is a little church. And how do you behave in church? When we walk into church, we do so hopefully reverently. We sign ourselves and we take on a posture that's church-like. Yeah. But if your home is the little church, then how reverent are we in our home?
This is deep.
And how do we interact with? So when you go to church, I love, like, when you're around Father and somebody says something and you let some. Oh, sorry, Father, you're apologizing because there's a priest there and you said damn or something. Like he's never heard that before. But our attitude changes sometimes when we go to church. But why do we not adopt that in our little church, our home church? And your kids model you when you're at church, but they model you when you're at home too. So, John, when your son sees you doing that, he's also watching you help in the kitchen. Yeah. And you and your wife work together to prepare a meal, or to do the dishes, or to clean the house, or you're speaking charitably about plans that for whatever's happening in the family.
Yeah.
So before we get to that other part, I think understanding that your home is a little sacred spot. And yes, all the icons and the pictures and the crucifixes are part of that, but how you see your home, when you walk in from the craziness of the world, you should walk into a little church.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And if just that attitude change alone, hopefully then there's almost the sanctuary of your home. That when you come into your home, you're in this sanctuary, this little church.
Yeah.
And you're not hiding.
You're not hiding.
But you're preparing them
No, you're preparing. Yes.
to go out.
Yeah, it sounds so good. This conversation sounds so good about home and family. It sounds it's like the basic premise of our faith. And I think I would like us to dig deep and dwell on this for a little bit.
Sounds
because
like
I
a
think,
two-parter again.
Yeah, it sounds like a two-parter because I think even before we help other people, we have to really clearly understand this premise, this home, this family.
What's the foundation that we're working
And
on?
we
Yeah.
can talk about some very practical examples
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's for the benefit of the listeners.
Yeah,
So that'll be the next episode. We'll carry that on.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about this.
Right. I
Yeah.
agree 100%.
Agree?
Okay.
Very good.
Whew. My friends, I'm even feeling hot. I'm like in a hot seat because I'm agitated. I want to talk about
It's
this
also
more.
90 degrees and we're
Oh.
outside. But other than
It's also not, yeah, we are outside here, and I appreciate all of you for listening, and I appreciate my co-host and our guest today. And again, this is Village Catholic Conversation. My name is John Kilukia, your host, and my co-host, Advima Jr., and our guest, Tom Farrow. And we'll be right back for the second part of this conversation.
until then, go start your own conversation.
Start your own conversation.
God bless.
God bless.